Good evening, everybody. My name is Chef Diamond. You can find me online at Uptown Amante. I am super excited to be here. I'm super excited for this recipe. I really enjoyed the first cook through the first workshop. I'm excited to bring you all something different for this workshop. We'll talk through a lot of tips and tricks, and we'll certainly be discussing depression. We'll be discussing how your food choices and your mood go hand in hand. We'll be discussing all of it. Please feel free to ask me a question, jump in, interrupt me. The more we engage, the better. No question is a stupid question. If I'm going too fast, feel free to let me know I'm going too fast and I'll slow down. All right. So I'm gonna go through what I have here on my setup and then we're gonna jump into cooking. So as always, as last time, as a diehard Bronx girl, gotta plug in Kelly Street Garden. Kelly Street Garden provided many of our produce that we have sitting up here. Really beautiful kale. We have some collards. We have a bunch here that were harvested. I'm super excited to be using these things again because farm to table is what we're here for. And farm to table is what we all aspire to get more into. Kelly Street Garden is open year round. Connect with them. They have lots of community events. They certainly go above and beyond to make sure that they're accessible. They have calendars for harvesting. They have harvest days. Get into it. Kelly Street Garden gave me my first actual job straight home from culinary school. I taught a cooking workshop there when I was an itty bitty chef baby back in 2014. So I'm always gonna plug Kelly Street Garden. Love working with them. Love the folks over there. But yes, so I have some the teeniest carrot, and we're gonna be using the carrot fronds today, and I'm gonna talk some about just using all of the vegetable versus discarding most of the vegetable. I have some collard leaves here. We have a nice assortment of kale. Some of our kale is different colors. We have some Swiss chard here. And for today's pesto, we're gonna be using all of these greens. When we think of pesto, sometimes we just think of that bright green sauce that is on pasta. Pesto can be anything. Traditional pesto is just a ton of basil and garlic. It doesn't have to be that. You can make a pesto from any leafy green that's not necessarily water-based. So like you can't do it with a romaine lettuce, you can't do it with an iceberg lettuce because those lettuces are mostly liquid. People don't know that because we see solid, but you can actually grow them from a cup of water right in your home. So if you have kale, if you have arugula, if you have spinach, you can blend them down into a pesto. The basis for a good pesto is your green, a nut of your choice, a cheese of your choice, olive oil, salt, pepper, lemon juice. That's it. You take those elements, you can make a pesto, and you can put it on your pasta. Doesn't matter what color it turns out to be, doesn't matter what consistency it turns out to be. Usually, if you're making a pesto, once you blend it, it'll be kind of thick and pasty. But the trick is that if we're making a pesto, and especially if we're using pasta water, we want to save a cup of pasta water. It thins out our pesto. You don't have to cook pesto on the stove. And the reason why I'm not going to be cooking my pesto on the stove today is because when you actually take fruit and vegetables and blend them, you open up the natural nutrients. When that hits the heat, they start to die. This is natural with any food that we have. So what I choose to do is I cook my pasta, I reserve a little bit of my pasta water, and I stir my pesto into that hot pasta and that hot pasta water. So nothing is burning off on the pan, and I still have my bright flavors that I'm looking for. Right now is just going to be taking the stems off of my green veg and dumping them in my blender. So what folks don't know, or I see a lot of people struggle, one of my favorite tips of de-stemming kale, collards, anything, your dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, hold the base of your stem and just pull the stem through. and you have your leaf. If you want to just then rip your leaf in half, you can. But that is a fairly easy way to de-stem kale. A lot of folks are intimidated because kale it has a lot of fiber stems. They can be kind of chewy. They can be quite unpleasant. So if you want to get rid of those stems, just pull through. All right, my pesto is done. I'm gonna let that hang out. I'm gonna put my pasta on the stove. I already have my pasta water going. When you make pasta, one of the key things to making pasta like a chef is salting your water. So your pasta water should be salty. You should be able to take a spoonful and know that there's salt in there. And salting your pasta water minimizes the need to salt anything else that you're putting in that pasta. It reduces our sodium rates. It minimizes all of the other seasonings we might have to put into our food. And if you have good pasta, you know if the pasta itself has been seasoned because it's just a totally different bite and a totally different experience. My water's been boiling. It's already hot. It has salt in it. I'm just going to dump my pasta in. All right, so I needed a peeler and I could not find one, but I am Chef MacGyver, also one of my nicknames. And a lot of folks don't know this, but you can use a crumpled up piece of foil to take the rough parts off root vegetables. So beets, carrots, turnips, their skin is totally edible. And we've just kind of been convinced that we need to remove the skin for whatever reason. Some folks are more comfortable with it. I already washed these, so when you wash them, you can give them a scrub, or you can scrub with a piece of foil right under your sink water, and you get all of those like little nooks and crannies that you think that you might be missing, and serve as is. So I'm gonna cut just like this. You can see the spots where we removed the dirt that's kind of settled into our turnip, and shortcuts. If you don't have to spend money on a tool, don't. Most of us have aluminum foil in our houses. It's also a lot easier, like if you wanted to roast this whole and then use the foil to remove the skin, it'll come right off. You can do the same with carrots, you can do the same with beets, you can do the same with most root vegetables. I am cutting on a bias, and one thing that I want everyone to pay attention to is that cutting this way versus cutting straight across changes your cooking time and it changes the flavor of the vegetable. When you cut at a bias, you're making more of an open surface area. So the inside of your vegetable, anything that you're cutting, if you cut this way, it's a lot smaller than if you cut this way. If you cut this way, it'll cook faster than if you cut this. If you're cutting your carrot into corn straight across, you can do that. It'll take a lot longer to penetrate, for the heat to penetrate the carrot itself. If you cut on a bias, then it'll cook quicker on both sides because there's more surface area for heat to get in. The skin on root vegetables is very, very strong. It might seem thin to us, but it's strong and it's resistant to temperature. So cutting on a bias and increasing the surface area allows for it to cook faster. And it's a little prettier, I think.
Yeah, I like the way it looks.
All right, I was just cutting my veggies. They're not gonna be touched yet. Now I'm gonna start with my chicken. And the same practice with rosemary, like I did with the stems of the kale. My leaves are growing upward, they're growing this way. So in order to remove the stems, I'm gonna swipe opposite and clean my branch. I'm gonna give my rosemary a rough chop. I don't wanna chop it too much. What I'm doing now is I'm about to season the chicken. I'm gonna pat it dry first. This is a super controversial thing because everybody saw me take my chicken out the pack and put it right on the plate, and I'm about to go in. I have Caribbean roots. I have Black American roots. You do not clean your chicken. You do not rinse your chicken. Lemon juice, lime juice, vinegar, something, right? This is what I'm gonna say. And this is science, and I am able to have this argument because I can stick by science. When we add lime, lemon, vinegar to our proteins, any protein, they begin to cook. Traditionally, our people, Black and brown people, clean meat that way because of limited access to refrigeration. Mm-hmm. So when we would have meat, we didn't have a refrigerator that we could store meat in. We had to kill the bacteria. We had to kill the bugs. Sometimes there were flies around. We had to create a deterrent. And the only way to make sure that viruses weren't on the meat is to give it a vinegar wash or rinse it with lime and lemon. It is normal. It is something that has passed down historically to all of the people in the world. But I 1 million bazillion guarantee you that any place that you have eaten in public has not washed their meat before they fed. And it's because it is not necessary. And also water does not clean meat. Neither does, you can kill the bacteria with vinegar, but then once you put it in a pan, that vinegar doesn't do any work. The only thing that kills germs on protein is heat or cold. So there are germs on a piece of steak when it gets cut from a cow. They put it in a package and they put it in the freezer, no more germs. If this chicken is filled with bacteria right now, the minute it hits heat, I kill that bacteria. But it is not necessary. You are not unsafe if you don't do it. And it is something to keep in mind. We actually put ourselves at risk when we do that, because what happens is folks use vinegar, limes, lemons, they clean their chicken and they set it aside and they start doing other things. Then you expose it again to the elements, and guess what? Bacteria comes back on it. And so you are par cooking your chicken. You're allowing salmonella to breed, and that's what gets people sick. I do want to talk about salt here. This is sea salt that they have here in the States. That's what I'm using. What I use at home is kosher flake salt. Diamond Crystal comes in a big red box. The reason why I use kosher salt is because I actually took a salt and water course in culinary school where they taught me about salt and water from all around the world. And apparently, here in this lovely country that is ours, we treat our salts differently. Table salt, sea salt, pink Himalayan salt, they all get chemically processed. Iodized salt, chemically processed. So iodized salt is good because then you get iodine. However, iodized salt gets treated with citric acid. So if you're using iodized salt and then you're also cooking with lemon, your food is going to taste more bitter than it does taste salty. So you'll be inclined to use more iodized salt because you're like, I can't taste the salt, something's off, it tastes super bitter. So I use Diamond Kosher flake salt because it's the only salt in the market that's not processed. It's the only salt in the market that doesn't get chemically treated. I don't use pink Himalayan salt because it's not ethically sourced. And it is not special. It's just pink. People are convinced. There was a food fad that happened a couple years ago. And there are a lot of reasons why those kinds of fads happen. A lot of them are due to colonization, but food fads come and they go, and they hit people hard, and then people move on to the next thing. But there are communities that get directly affected. And there are cultures that only use pink Himalayan salt. Salt is not a seasoning. And I say this every person that I teach. Salt is not a seasoning. Salt is not a spice. Salt's intention is to bloom the flavors of everything else. So if I have garlic, if I have onion, if I have tomato, I put a pinch of salt so that I can taste everything in its balance, not so that I can taste the salt. You should never be tasting salt. You should be tasting all of the things in your food. And I know that I'm eating well-seasoned food with a little bit of salt when I can tell you what the recipe is without reading it. So sometimes I'll eat something and I'm like, this definitely has tomato. This definitely has eggplant. This definitely used onion. I can tell if the onion is red or yellow. Like those things are important. And when you use too much salt, it kind of mutes all of those flavors and then you lose them. And we never want to lose them because that's why we use it. We use it so that we can taste everything and know everything and interact with all different types of food. I'm gonna let my vegetables glaze. And traditionally, glazed veggies use sugar, and I'm gonna use agave. I browned my butter, so brown butter has a nice nuttiness to it. My agave is gonna bring out some of the sweetness that already exists in these vegetables. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt to bloom them. And they are gonna be fantastic. That's just gonna hang out. Gonna cook until the water begins to evaporate, and you'll start to see that the veggies are gonna be nice and shiny. That's what we're looking for. I have my pan on with my chicken, rather, nice and hot. Your pan is hot, and it's important to know, especially when you want nice color on your protein, on your chicken, on your steak, on anything, that your pan has to be hot because your oil is cold. Cold pan plus cold oil means oxygen gets trapped. When you put your meat in, it starts to oxidize and it'll turn your steak and your chicken gray, or it turns it nice and brown. So my pan is hot, and when oil hits a hot pan, it immediately moves. If you put oil in a pan and it's slow to spread, that means your pan's not hot enough. Now I'm gonna add my chicken. We cook with all of our senses, so you also want to hear that the pan is hot as well. My pan is an oven-safe pan, so I'm gonna transfer my pan to the oven once I flip my chicken. If you do not have an oven-safe pan, that's perfectly okay. You can build a tent with foil. You take some aluminum foil, make sure you have like a baby sheet or a cake pan or anything you got, you can use. You put your chicken inside, and then you tent it and let it cook like that. It'll create a natural steam. It'll keep the chicken breast moist. You seal up the sides so that your juices don't run out. And here you have a foil tent. Meat sticks to a pan, period. So it's gonna stick to the pan. When it releases from the pan and it slides in your pan, it is ready to be moved. So if you're going to turn a piece of chicken and it's stuck, it's not ready yet. Don't continue to lift because then you'll tear a piece off and then you'll have burnt bits at the bottom. You don't want that. I'm gonna finish it with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice for some added brightness. It's gonna go in our oven to finish cooking through on the inside. And when you're searing the chicken breast, you'll be able to see some like golden edges around without even touching it. You want to challenge yourself to use all of your senses. You're listening to the chicken sizzle. One thing I learned, especially when I began frying chicken, is the more close it is to being cooked, the quieter the oil sounds. So paying attention to how things sound, how things smell, what you're looking at, how it feels to the touch, those things are necessary when you're cooking in a kitchen. And I shared that in March of 2020, I got COVID and I lost my sense of smell permanently. So I cannot smell any of this right now. It has affected me, but I also had to push and learn other ways to pay attention to my food. And it's just trial and error. You know, you take what you have and you keep moving along and you figure out another way to navigate. When you want to use lemon juice, cut your lemon in half, squeeze over your fingertips, your fingers catch the juice. So my pasta, I kept my pasta water in the pot itself. Some things to know, pasta only takes 12 minutes to cook. Anything longer than that turns it into mush.
Yes.
Don't cook your pasta and then let it sit in the water because it will continue to cook in the water. I'm going to finish my pesto with some cheese for prettiness. So I have a cooking business. I do catering classes all the time. And in those classes, often people are like, we're not gonna use butter. We're not gonna use this. We're not gonna use that. And I'm like, we don't have to. You know, and I teach with the alternative in place so that the alternative is actually the norm. I've been in spaces with folks who are like, well, I can't make this because I didn't have any butter on it. They have coconut oil. You know, like there are so many options, and I try to just introduce animal-free products into cooking where I can, just because it's good. You know, it's a good practice. Let's get green vegetables into our kitchens however we can. Let's use green vegetables however we can. There's more than one way to cook any and everything. And I want to live in a world where we know how to cook any and everything, however many ways. So I do want to jump in and ask the question, have we heard of the term seasonal depression before? Have you heard of the term, and how do you think it affects the way you eat in the winter? When 4 p.m. looks like it's 9 p.m., how do you think that affects your food choices?
I know for me, as the day starts to feel later, then I'll want things that feel like dinner. And oftentimes I'm still working, even though it feels like 9 p.m. And so I'll be eating heavier earlier, and I'll be getting sleepier earlier, and then I'll wear that food off. And when it's time to eat dinner, I want some more of the heavy stuff. And that's kind of what I've noticed in terms of like my winter cycle.
It's important to pay attention. Sometimes we focus on the food choices and not the food feelings. And unfortunately, we convince ourselves to disconnect emotion from eating. When we can't do that, when we feel sad, we seek out the food that make us feel happy. So if I'm having a rough day at work and I don't really know what I'm gonna cook for dinner, and I gotta pick up my kids from school, and maybe my partner, my husband, my wife, whoever is texting me like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, you know, and I walk into the bodega because I know that I need a small canola oil. And I see butter cookies. I'm gonna get these butter cookies, and nobody better ask me for none because I had a rough day and these are mine, right? That happens to us because we are creatures of habit and we are emotional eaters. They affect us all in different capacities, but we're 100% emotional. I am an emotional eater in a major way. In my weight loss journey, I've lost over 200 pounds. And in that process of changing what my body looks like and changing what the narrative of my health was, I also had to go to therapy because I could feel me wanting to like binge when I was feeling uncomfortable. Me getting a bag of chips that I didn't really want because I stopped eating chips because I was having a rough day. Connecting to my emotions taught me how to take care of my body, taught me how to keep the weight off, teaches me how to continue to be kind to my body and appreciate my body, but also gives me the confidence to say I'm eating chips because I want to, not because I feel sad. And I'm not eating them because you're looking at me like, oh, she shouldn't be eating chips. I'm eating them because I want to, and I'm growing paid for them. You know, like, and that's really just what it is. It's important to eat foods that make you feel good. Eat foods that correspond with your emotion, and then have a self-conversation about what that emotion was. So maybe you did have a fried chicken dinner and your body doesn't feel the healthiest, But now it's time to assess your day, right? What happened in my day? Was I feeling heavy? Was I feeling overwhelmed? Was I seeking comfort? What parts of that meal felt comforting? Did I like the crunch of that fried chicken? Okay, tomorrow, what can I replace the crunch of fried chicken with? I can have some steamed broccoli. It's the same crunch. That part interacts with my senses, releases dopamine in the same ways. So today was okay, and my chicken was good. And tomorrow I'm gonna have broccoli, and my broccoli is gonna be good. Negative talk around food promotes really unhealthy habits. It promotes a sadness that people don't deserve. And it teaches us really negative things about food in general. And I think a lot of the reason why people struggle with weight loss in general and just weight maintenance is the shame around food and eating food choices. I don't want anybody to ever feel shame because we shouldn't have to feel shame. You know, the food exists and it's good. And so the last tip I want to give to the room is knowing when your chicken is done, when your steak is done. Chicken breasts are super finicky and they can be raw inside, even though they seem cooked on the outside. I want everybody to hold up their hand. All right. So touch your pinky and your thumb. You feel this muscle here? Mm-hmm. This is what a raw chicken breast feels like. You open your pack of chicken, you press, it's like you squeeze this piece right here. Raw chicken. Wow. Raw steak. If you do ring finger and thumb, now we're in medium rare zone. Probably a little more rare than not. Middle finger and thumb. Now we're at medium well. You want to press to create tension in the muscle. So middle finger and thumb pressing together. Now I'm squeezing this muscle. That's what a steak or chicken breast is like when it is medium well. For chicken, we definitely want to keep it cooking. But if you like a medium well steak, this is what you should feel. This is the level of tension. Now press pointer finger and thumb. Press tight and feel the firmness. That's what it feels like when it's done. Wow. So if you don't have a meat thermometer, but you don't want to cut into your chicken breast because you don't want to lose all of that juice and all of those flavors, use your hand and gauge. It's the easiest way. It is an available tool. You don't have two hands, borrow somebody else's hand. And it's a good way to know what you're doing. And this is what I mean when I say we don't have to spend $1,000 at the stores for all of the tools to know what's happening in our kitchen. I appreciate all of you for participating. I really, really love doing these. I love the questions. Please continue to come to these groups and come to these workshops. DreamYard is doing really, really great work. Sadaya is doing really, really great work. I love coming here. I love talking to you all. You can find me on Instagram, Uptown Amante. You can shoot me a message. I'm always answering. My email's posted there too. If you have a question about health, if you have a question about a recipe, I am not the kind of chef that's like, it's $5 for a recipe. Like, I went to school specifically to come back to the Bronx and change the way I ate, change the way my community ate, change the way my family. So if you have a question about anything, never hesitate to reach out and ask. At some point this month, you sit down and you have a meal that you really enjoy. I want you to sit at a table with a real plate, not a paper plate, a dish, a knife, a fork. Sit down and really engage with food. It changes how you eat. It changes the experience of the food. And I promise you that doing that for yourself, even once a month, will change how you feel about cooking slowly but surely. A lot of folks do not like to cook, but it's also because we cook in a rush, we eat in a rush, we're eating on the go, we're eating on the sofa, we're not sitting stationary at a table with us and the meal. And sometimes you have to do that to reignite your relationship with food in general. I want everybody to have a great night. Thank you so much for everybody's participation. And if you did cook, I hope you enjoy. If you did not cook, I hope you take the recipe, pass it on, try it out. And let me know what you think. Don't forget to send us your pictures.